this fellow, his father had died of cancer. He started to try to figure out why many of his neighbors had cancer. And then after long effort, was able to figure out what was going on, but not really because the government helped. In fact, the local mayor was worried this is going to mean we have poisoned drinking water, but we're trying to promote our town. And then it turned out that the state government, which at the time was led by Andrew Cuomo, they knew for a long time that there was a problem and did not alert the community. That kind of translates to what's going on in Washington, where they firing people. We're not going to have good data on health, environmental issues, whatever. Efforts that these accidental activists make in learning how to get public records, organize their communities, network with people, etc. Very useful tools now for anybody who is concerned about what's going on in Washington.
So Miranda Spivack is a veteran reporter and editor who specializes in stories about government accountability and secrecy. She spent well over 20 years as an award-winning editor and reporter at the Washington Post, covering me at various times when I was in office. So I know Miranda very well. She is tenacious and she's very good at what she does. She's a former Fulbright scholar and distinguished visiting professor of journalism at DePaul University. She lives in Maryland, so she's a fellow Marylander. So she's the crab cakes. It matters. But she's got this great new book out, which we really get into. And as someone who was an official in state government, really appreciate where she goes with this book, entitled Backroom Deals in Our Backyards: How Government Secrecy Harms Our Communities and the Local Heroes That Are Fighting Back. Miranda Spivack will join me to talk about that and how citizens are more and more engaging government and demanding transparency, demanding an openness so that they can get things fixed. We're going to talk about that with Miranda right here on the Michael Steele Podcast coming up after this. Hey, folks, welcome to the Michael Steele Podcast. Always a treat when you sit down with me and enjoy a conversation with the great guests that we have on. And we have a great guest on today who's written a very interesting book. Not only is this timely, but it's how we see all of these pieces starting to fit together and explaining what's happening. It is a real treat to welcome you, Miranda, to the Michael Steele Podcast.
It's great to be here. Michael and I go way back.
We do. Long history in the vineyard, as they say. She's picking more grapes than me. Trust me. She was like, let's do this. Let's keep going. Rock and roll. You've been a reporter, editor. You have sort of captured over your career the story of Maryland, of states, of the country, of the experience of the American people. This book is a little bit of a different tale, I think. And your work as a journalist covering government and public policy for the years that you have really, I think, kind of come through. How did your reporting experience shape this book out of the gate?
Yeah, it is sort of personal, and which is the same experience that the people who I call accidental activists in the book also got involved in interacting with their state and local governments. So as Michael knows, I was a reporter and an editor for the Washington Post for about 20 years, all on state and local, which, I feel very committed to, because I think that is really where most people's lives are affected by government. And even now with all this turmoil in DC, you're more likely to interact with your state or local government, your county council, your school board, something you need from the state government, a tax issue, whatever. That's just statistically more likely where people are going to come into contact with government. Unless right now they're trying to get Social Security, which is a whole nother story.
Right.
So I was in as this is where I actually met Michael Steele. I was in Prince George's County for the Post, and that county actually has kind of a mixed history of some corruption and a lot of,
Jack Johnson.
yeah, county executive went to prison for bribery and other issues, but also just sort of a history of being very close to developers and a lot of things that really do affect how communities are built and how they evolve. And I was having trouble getting information from the government, things that I thought are very routine that tax dollars have already paid for, a contract with an outside
Hmm.
contractor, which every government has, lots of outside contracts. Information on why certain budget decisions were being made and others were not. Just a whole variety of things. And the government was very shut down. And that was both at the county level and to some extent at the state level. And I was like, I don't get this. This is stuff that I know are public documents. Why are they being so difficult and obstructionist in not giving them to me? And so it's not that I haven't encountered that before in other communities, but it was, I think, particularly acute in Prince George's at the time. And this is, 15 years ago or whatever. And so I started talking to my Washington Post colleagues and saying, are you having this kind of problem in the community you're covering? What's going on? And then after I left the Post, from there, I ended up doing a series of stories called State Secrets, play on words,
Hmm.
uh, for Reveal from the Center for Investigative Reporting, in which I did look all around the country and found lots and lots of information blockades by state and local governments. And sometimes it's just over mundane stuff. It's like, who's
Right.
the trash? Why did this company get the trash collection contract and not this company? What kind of background checks are you doing for school bus drivers? Just stuff that, ought to be out there, frankly, ought to be posted on a website, but a lot of governments don't do that. And so, and then I thought, okay, how much do people care about journalists really having this problem? How about real people in real life who want something from their government and can't get it? And that became the inspiration from the book. None of the people are trained in any way in seeking government records or information. They are sort of accidental activists. They don't seek out the limelight or they try to resolve the problems that they are confronted with, but ultimately that's where they end up in long efforts, years long efforts.
Yeah, you take for folks to get a better feel for the thrust of the book. It really is about Backroom Deals is about five accidental activists, as you refer to them, uh, people from across the country who, I guess just started looking at what their local government was doing, and their state government was doing, and saying, "What the hell are they doing?" you
Right.
know, and that they began to sort of take on the question, and tried to find ways in which they could, get some answers that would address the issue in their communities. Is their what they discover is the lack of transparency and the secret deals and the lies that are told to people and the corruption, and so that from that you get a sense of not just those stories, Miranda, but also how this now translates on a larger scale in light of what we see coming out of this current administration, which has redefined corruption as just doing business. So talk about that part of it. Um, what were the triggers that you saw that it got these five activists to say, "Screw it, I'm done. I gotta figure out what the hell's going on here because this doesn't make any sense."
Yeah. But they're really kitchen table issues. One of the communities had poisoned drinking water, which nobody knew about. This was in New York State. And this fellow who was an insurance adjuster in his day job, his father had died of cancer. He's in a small town in upstate New York, Hoosick Falls. He started to try to figure out why many of his neighbors had cancer, different kinds of cancer. And then ultimately after long effort, was able to figure out what was going on, but not really because the government helped. In fact, the local mayor was worried this is going to mean we have poisoned drinking water, but we're trying to promote our town as, a place to be. Did not want people to know about it. And then it turned out that the state government, which at the time was led by Andrew Cuomo, now running for mayor in New York, they knew for a long time that there was a problem in Hoosick Falls too, and did not alert the community. So people were drinking this PFAS-laden, forever chemicals-laden drinking water for a long time without knowing it. That's one of the issues, and that sort of ripples up. I mean, if you can see that the governor and his administration isn't being very transparent, that kind of translates to what's going on in Washington, where not only are they firing people and getting rid of subject matter experts and the public records experts, but they are just getting rid of data so that we're not going to have good data on health, on environmental issues, whatever. And so the kind of efforts that these accidental activists make in learning how to get public records and learning how to organize their communities, network with people, etc. Very useful tools now for anybody who is concerned about what's going on in Washington. The other issues are Maryland, not a great state for transparency, despite its liberal reputation. This was a guy who wanted to get a left turning light at a dangerous intersection. It took him about 10 years. The state wouldn't give him all kinds of documents that he thought he needed to show, the danger at the intersection, because the state had done engineering studies and kept saying, no, it's not that dangerous. We don't need to fix this. In that case, a horrible fatal accident. Finally, the public perception became so bad for the state that they did cough up some of the information and make changes, but they still haven't changed their policy. They still will not give out information routinely about dangerous intersections and data that might go into.
And in that case, I mean, again, I think the intriguing thing is that is such an innocuous issue. You would think that people saying, all right, hello, state transportation department or county transportation department, whether it's a state road or a county road, because that, believe it or not, folks, makes a difference. The state's like, well, that's a county road. We don't. County's like, I don't know. That's a local road. That's the municipality of Bowie. That's their road. We don't. The road is the road. Who has responsibility? That's the thing. And it really gets to the point where you're saying we just need a traffic light for something as simple as a traffic light, let alone complicated like drinking water being poisoned. How widespread is the secrecy in government? So this is not localized to Prince George's County, Maryland, or Maryland general. This is across the country.
Right. The dangerous roads problem is nationwide, except for New York State and Kansas, which had court rulings that went in the other direction. But pretty much every state will not give you information easily on what are the most dangerous roads.
And why is that? What's the big secret?
The interesting thing about that is that many, many years ago, Congress devised a loophole for this and said that the states, this has to do with money and scarce resources. States apply to the federal government for road repair money every year, and they're supposed to rank their top 10 most acute problems, most dangerous intersections, whatever. And so they don't want a lot of the states don't want that information out, A, because maybe you're number 11 and you're not on the list, but you have a very dangerous intersection or a bridge or whatever, and B, because if they know about the problems and they haven't fixed them, they feel that they are at risk for being sued, which they're correct about.
Well, fix the problem.
Right. Well, it does have to do with money and how money is allocated by state legislatures, et cetera. But the issue there that's sort of interesting about this is the way the law was written. It wasn't that you couldn't give out this information to the public. It was that if there was a lawsuit, this particular information could not be used in the discovery process. And so it couldn't be used necessarily in a lawsuit to show negligence, but that doesn't mean that the public couldn't have it. And yet Maryland would say, and did say, it's not in the public interest to give you this information. And maybe someday, speculatively, there is going to be a lawsuit. I mean, it's just, circle the wagons, protect ourselves.
Wait a minute, let me get this straight. So let's just say, in the example you gave of the intersection, which had a tragic fatality because no one put the stoplight up. Someone made the left turn, and boom, there we are. That in a succeeding lawsuit, that they would not be able to get the records from the state about any accidents or any history of accidents or what the state knew about that intersection, meaning if there were citizens' complaints or county complaints, if it's a state road, et cetera, that information was not discoverable at all?
Well, it depends on how much of it was used for the purpose of applying for federal funds. And if all of it was used for that purpose, that's the loophole. If some of it wasn't used for that purpose, in theory, it would be gettable. But, Maryland and most other states are like, no. We can't distinguish. We're just not going to give it out. And, the interesting thing about that is partly because there was also public pressure before this horrible accident in which a father, mother, and daughter were killed as they were trying to make this left turn on the way to a high school play. I mean, I don't know how much more horrible that's. Anyway, the community people and this, guy Richard Boltock, who was leading the effort, did get some data from Montgomery County, which is where this road is. And they were able to get some accident reports, which are managed by the local police, even though it's a state road, that whole complication. And then the state did give them a little bit of information, and they cross-checked the data that they did get, which was about local accidents at that intersection, with the state data, and came to realize the state did not have all the information included in their reports. So they were turning down this request for this left turning light, maybe with incomplete data, which is, another dimension to this. That's why the public needs to get this information. It can actually help the government do a better job. But most state and local governments don't see it that way. They see it as an attack on them.
Well, and them. What are them? You are actually, in one respect, sort of a fictional thing. I mean, you are there because the American people, the people in the state, create you, right? They give you the power. I mean, so all of a sudden you set up these institutions that are adversarial to the very people who elected them and put them in positions of responsibility, and they start hiding the ball, meaning information, from people because they're too damn lazy, too damn stupid, or a dangerous combination of both, to deal with something as simple as putting a damn left turn light at a dangerous intersection. If the people in the community raise their hand and go, hey, this water tastes funny, could you check it out and tell us if something's going on here? Or, hey, this intersection is dangerous because it's hard to make the left turn here safely. Could you put a left turn light here so that it can be done? Or, hey, this issue over here is a problem. Why is the government so defensive about the things it was designed to protect us from and to be on top of? Are there
Well,
special interests that we should know about, I dare ask?
there are in many instances in the case of Hoosick Falls, where the poison drinking water was, and which was traceable to a lot of different factories that had been in the community over many years, eventually traceable. One of the fears that local elected officials have is that these companies, and this is true also in the case in Alabama, which involves a catfish plant and sewer issues, but these companies are local jobs. And so, the companies, just like the way Amazon went around the country and did all these secret deals with non-disclosure agreements, where are we going to put our second headquarters? No, you can't tell anybody what you're offering us in the way of tax breaks, et cetera. But, there's a fear that companies will just pick up and move to Mexico, or maybe not now, but that their jobs are going to go away. Whether it's that is one of the fears. I think one of the other issues, frankly, is underfunding. I mean, I would say that it's going to get worse now because all this federal money is going away and federal programs are going away. But state and local governments, I would argue, and generally are underfunded. I mean, Prince George's, for example, has never really adjusted its property tax issue and has capped it for a long time. And so, in other parts of the country, it's, nobody wants to run on raising taxes. But the problem is that the real life impact of lack of funds or disagreements on how you deploy those funds, maybe you're spending it over here, but really should be spending it on roads.
Right.
I think those are real problems that, people in unelected, government and people are grappling with. And, it's really up to the legislatures, I think, to do more about funding. And of course, it's up to Washington too. And, now we're in this, slash and burn, don't spend money, but enrich, the president with cryptocurrency deals or whatever. There's this whole thing that's happening now is just going to exacerbate the problems that the communities I wrote about or other communities are going to experience.
How do the local officials justify the secrecy? I mean, I guess that's a big question. And how often is it a matter of, you just mentioned, legal loopholes versus outright misconduct? I get the whole, the feds did this, and therefore that created a loophole for the state over here. But it's not just the loophole. It's also just some bad faith acting here.
There's definitely that. In Virginia, where there are this big push for data centers, which suck up a lot of water, use a lot of electricity. They're not fun to have in your neighborhood. They're noisy, whatever. So, there was a town manager in one of these communities in fairly outside of DC. It was either Prince William or further down. I honestly not 100. I can't remember it exactly. But so was the town manager helping to bring in these data centers, which the people in the community are worried about because their electric rates are going to go up and they're going to subsidize, Microsoft, Amazon, and whomever are building these data centers. And then went to work for Amazon, and so was helping Amazon, and then went to work for Amazon, and then I looked at Virginia's revolving door law. I mean, it's toothless, and so this person, in theory, couldn't use her knowledge that she'd gleaned in the government side when she was inside the corporation. But who's going to police that? There's no way to prove. There's no way to prove it. I've always had a sort of mixed feeling as a journalist that, when in doubt, it's probably incompetence, but it can also be conspiracy and a protection racket. I'm not ruling it out, but I think the first line of questioning about why these things happen is There's sort of anxiety about maybe the public's going to discover we did something wrong. We don't know where the records are. There's just a lot of different things that go into this. It's not all malevolence.
It's not. It's not malevolent. That's very true. And I don't think, and we certainly don't want to create that impression. I mean, someone who, with Governor Ehrlich, we ran state government and got to see some of the back end side of some of this. I remember having conversations with several agencies and cabinet secretaries about their processes, and it's like, well, why are we doing it this way? It's not efficient and it's suspicious. You just go creating unnecessary suspicion about what it is you're doing or not doing. And again, to your point, there wasn't anything malevolent about it. It was just the way the system was set up originally, and no one bothered to look at it again to see whether it was running efficiently. And certainly any issues that were raised about it weren't, in all instances or many instances, taken seriously. So there is that aspect of it, but it does beg, I think, a number of questions around, the impact of these of local governments and state governments operationalizing inefficiency, and making that sort of the standard, and then getting really defensive about it when people make inquiries about why is this so inefficient. Right. I mean, the fact that people would raise their hand and go, guys, this doesn't make sense, should always be a red flag. What is the hesitancy? I mean, you touched on it a little bit, if there's federal money involved, we don't want to mess up that gravy train. Well, guess what? Trump has already disrupted that. So because a lot of these agencies, money ain't flowing downhill anymore. It's just cut off.
Right.
Or you have the argument, well, it's not so much federal money, but it's we don't want to create an appearance of X, Y, and Z. Well, why is the government concerned about anything other than whether or not it's getting it right? I mean, you don't have to worry about your appearance if you're getting it right. And if someone raises a concern, that's the appearance you want to give, that you're interested and you're going to try to fix it. So what is that disconnect there where, sunshine laws and other tools that you would think create efficiency in the market actually sometimes doesn't?
Well, I think, even though these laws exist all over the country, every state and territory, where public records are supposed to be accessible to the public at a minimal, if not zero cost, because after all, our tax dollars already paid for this stuff.
There we go.
But I think that, there is this aura of openness. Everybody's got the laws on their books. The real question is sort of the will and enforcement of the government, and why, for example, in this case in Alabama, which has to do with a sewer system, which needs to be fixed in a historically poor African-American community, and, where there've been sewer overflows and whatever. And so this one guy, a man named Ben Eaton, who is the high school shop teacher, starts asking, why are you doing, there's a board now of local people who have no training, frankly, in sewer issues. So they're very reliant on their consultants, and they've hired the consultants. Everybody's contracted with a company that already didn't fix the problem, one federal grant ago, and now they've got a lot more money and they still haven't resolved it. And, this person and some of his community members are saying, why did we go with this contractor? Why are you spending all this money and it's not getting the problem fixed? Why is your proposed solution? I'm not sure it's the right solution. Explain to us why you're going in this, taking this route. And among other things, he was told by one of the contractors that it was too complicated and, the people wouldn't understand it, blah, blah, blah. So there was that kind of defensive. And then money is going out the door. In fact, I think they've exhausted their whole federal grant, which is now about $30 million, and they still haven't fixed the problem. And I think it's a reasonable question to ask, why not? And did you do it the right way to begin with? And instead, took him a couple of years to get any kind of documents, contracts, whatever. And he eventually found a free lawyer from the American Civil Liberties Union who, and actually that was for a related case, but he actually got free legal help from a law clinic, which is something people should know about, because law schools have these student clinics that are actually very good at doing.
Yeah, they are.
And he got help from this law clinic, and they went into federal court in Washington, D.C., even though they're in Alabama, because one of the organizations that was blocking release of information, which had actually most of the information, was the U.S. Department of Agriculture. You might wonder, why is agriculture, not EPA, doing a sewer repair? Well, there's there is industry in the community that is. There's a catfish plant, there was a cheese plant. So, the agriculture department's mission is sort of to help agribusiness. And the EPA's mission, although who knows what it's going to be in a few weeks, but their mission was to help clean up the environment. Anyway, that's how somehow the agriculture department gets in. Anyway, this federal judge, John Bates, whose name is actually coming up in a lot of the Trump cases now, just basically said to the Department of Agriculture, cough it up. Why are you sitting on this? And so they did get a lot of information. And then I had also a records request with the federal government, was getting nowhere. So I rewrote my records request once Ben Eaton got his information. And all I said was, give me everything you just gave Ben Eaton. That was my records request. So, there's a lot of interesting stuff in these documents. And
I'll have what he's having.
Yeah, right. And it worked. And what the federal government had was information from the state and local governments, because they're all talking to each other when there are these kinds of projects. And there were a lot of doubts raised about the solution, and there's a lot of interesting stuff in there, but locally they still won't talk openly about their decision making.
The book is Backroom Deals in Our Backyards, How Government Secrecy Harms Our Communities and the Local Heroes Fighting Back. Miranda Spivack is the author. The book is out now. We want you to get a copy of it. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we got a few more. We want to dive in at another level with Miranda on her new book right after this. We need to talk about big tech for a second. It's clear that they flip-flop their ideological stances lately, and it shouldn't be a surprise. These aren't democratic institutions or journalistic endeavors. They're businesses tied to driving shareholder value. In these tools we use every day, folks, like Google, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook, we are not the customer. We are the product being bought and sold to the highest advertising bidder, and at the whim of their latest algorithm's decision on what news we should be seeing. Thankfully, I found a news platform that doesn't use manipulative algorithms to send me down a rabbit hole. Ground News delivers diverse perspectives, so I get the full story. Ground News is a platform that makes it easy to compare news sources, read between the lines of media bias, and break free from algorithms. Using Ground News, you can see the difference in coverage. For example, President Trump's recent movie tariff plan. On the left, you have The Guardian saying, quote, Trump's 100% film tariff plan is not in the interest of American businesses. But on the right, you have Breitbart saying, quote, Trump to impose 100% tariff on movies produced in foreign countries. We want movies made in America again. Now, we can all agree that it's hard to trust what we see in our social media feeds. Ground News helps me make sure I'm seeing every news story in the context of the larger media world. Now, with Ground News, you get details about the source of your information, including if the news outlet has a political bent, how reliable the reporting is, and who owns them, empowering you to compare how different news sources from around the world cover the same story. Expand your view of the news, folks. Sign up for your Ground News account right now and get access to the mobile app, website, browser extension, and exclusive newsletters so you can have a well-rounded view of the world, thinking critically about what you read and find common ground between perspectives. So go to groundnews.com/steele today to get 40% off the Ground News Vantage plan and get access to all of their news analysis features. That's groundnews.com/steele for 40% off the Ground News Vantage plan for a limited time only. groundnews.com/steele. Welcome back, everybody. Michael Steele here with Miranda Spivack, Washington Post journalist, editor, Fulbright scholar, and author of the new book, Backroom Deals in Our Backyards, How Government Secrecy Harms Our Communities and the Local Heroes Fighting Back. You were telling a great story before we went to break, of just you can just see how these, you go down one road and someone puts a roadblock and you try to figure out a way around the roadblock and you got to go over the hill around the corner. There's another roadblock. Mm-hmm. And just the obstruction, if you will, in just trying to get information to solve a problem in a community, whether it's a local community, a state, community as a whole. Just why is it so difficult? And I think is that the trigger for a lot of the heroes that you showcase or profile in the book, is that they just get to the point where they get fed up and they take an action. Because oftentimes what happens is, and quite honestly, government prefers this, and that is, if you get fed up, we want you to check out. We want you to feel completely helpless. I mean, we have the director, OPM, Office of Personnel Management. You've got in the federal government, you got other officials in the federal government basically saying, hey, the more frustrated federal workers are, the better it is for us in terms of wanting them to quit, right? So this idea of getting people to quit, to give up on the process, how much of that did you see in this?
Well, I think there's a huge risk of that at the state and local level, partly because if you can't get the information you're looking for from the government, in many, many states, your only recourse is to go to court. And that's very difficult. It's expensive. People don't have, the time, the wherewithal. They don't have the legal help, whatever. So there's an easy out for state and local governments in many, many places to just stall. I mean, look at, what the Trump administration is doing now. It's all delay. And people will go away. That is the
right.
hope. I think that what happened in the case of these 5 people was, and they're very patient people, actually, which probably is a characteristic you need to have in this kind of setting. But initially they go in, I know Michael Hickey in New York State, he went to the mayor, he said, I think we have a problem with the drinking water. And he thought the mayor would say, yeah, oh gosh, we have a problem. Let's help you, help us figure it out. And instead, oh God, please, no. And
right.
I think people come to this initially believing your government is here to help you. That's the cliche, right? But and then they find out that's not true, and it's sort of eye-opening.
Does that contribute to a lot of what we see now? So, which levels up the opportunity for someone like Trump to say, "I alone can fix it. Don't worry about it. I'll be your retribution against the institutions that have harmed you or won't perform for you." So when you look at what's happening at the federal level, the deconstruction of the administrative state, let's get rid of the waste, fraud, and abuse. We've been hearing it for 50, 60 years, and now you got guys coming in and just blowing everything up in the name of getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. And by and large, the American people are like, okay, good, thank you.
Yeah, I think once it hits you close to home, and it will, if it hasn't yet, I think people will feel differently about it. And I think that that's what these people experienced at the state and local level. They were getting they were getting blown off. They were getting condescended to. They were getting no information, and they were baffled by that. I mean, they really, I think, did come into this thinking, sure, I've discovered a problem. Where do I go? I go to my local government or my state government, and they're going to help me fix it. Or I'm going to tell them what the problem is. They're going to take it over and fix it. And that doesn't happen. Instead, these governments are in a defensive crouch for various reasons. As I said, underfunding. I mean, to be fair, that is a problem. But there's also of defensiveness. And so they just keep going. I mean, they're like, Michael Hickey, his father died of cancer. He has a son. He's like, right. Why are we living here drinking bad water? And same with Ben Eaton, why do we have this horrible sewer system and we're spending $30 million and we still haven't fixed it? This seems wrong. I mean, these people, I think, have a very strong sense of right and wrong and are willing to act on it. And these situations take years. I mean, that's the really awful part, but they are very tenacious. They're very focused. They learn to do all these things. They learn about public records laws. They learn how to build a network. They learn how to reach out to other people around the country who may have encountered similar issues. And believe me, these issues are all over the place.
Right.
And they stick with it. And it can be very, very frustrating. And they can take a lot of grief. Diane Cotter, the woman in New England who discovered that there were forever chemicals in firefighter protective gear, and that may be helping contribute to the high rate of cancer in the fire service, which is higher than the national data. She took a lot of grief. The firefighters union was against her for a long time. The manufacturers, of course, not surprisingly, were against her. There's a private regulator who the government takes their advice on what firefighter gear should be made up of, et cetera. They were working against her. Other activists got mad at her because there sometimes are fights about who's in the limelight or you're not, it's just wild. These are hard jobs. These are not jobs either that people are being paid for. This is a second job for most
Here's
people.
the question. Was she right?
Yeah. They haven't yet completely made a link up between it's like wearing Teflon and basically on this fire,
right.
firefighter. And there's a reason for that. You go into a fire, you don't want hot water penetrating your clothes. You don't want the chemicals you're encountering. I mean, there's reasons to make it, whatever, Teflon-like. But so they haven't necessarily linked the incidence of cancer to the specific issue that she has found. It's still being studied, though, and she helped get money for federal studies. I mean, this is somebody who was a hairdresser in Worcester, Mass. She didn't know anything about this stuff.
Right.
So I think it takes a certain personality to stick with it.
Well, that begs the question. Do you think that most local journalists and citizens have the tools that they need to confront the kind of secrecy that you're talking about?
Yeah, I think it's very tough. I think that, local journalism is dying all over the country. That's part of the problem is nobody's watching at midnight when the county council strikes a deal that they don't want you to know about. I think the tools are there in the laws, actually, and same with the Federal Freedom of Information Act. I mean, it's there. It's can be useful, but it's all about compliance. And so if the government stalls, and that seems to be the MO for the Trump administration on everything, if they stall, as you said, they hope you'll just give up and go away.
Right.
So I think the tools are there. One of the interesting things to me about these folks is that many of them used Facebook as a networking method to find other people around the country who they didn't know, but, they were posting things about the problems they were finding and, where there are other people confronting similar problems. So, there is social media can be very useful, I think, in this kind of work. I think we have the tools. I just think you have to have a tenacious personality, and then
Right.
you got to find the people in government, and there are good people in government. I don't want to trash everybody,
Right.
but you
Right.
got
Right.
to find those people who can help you and
Well,
who
so
are willing to do that.
so that begs the question: did you find areas of the country where there was very good transparency, where you could say, okay, these folks kind of get it. What were they doing differently? If let's say they're more transparent than Prince George's County, or they're more
Yeah.
transparent than Montgomery County, or they're more transparent than a county or even a state, Alabama or California. Where did you see hopeful signs of the transparency you think is an important element here?
Yeah. It's very localized, and
Yeah.
it's very, the state laws are all pretty similar, although some of them, like Alabama, ban people from out of state for, for getting public information, which is pretty bad.
Okay.
And that was actually, there was a Supreme Court case many, many years ago out of Virginia that said states do not have to respond to records requests from non-citizens, not even non-residents, non-citizens. So interestingly enough, in Alabama, I had a first round of information I got. On the second round, the lawyer for the water board realized I was an out-of-stater and said, "We don't have to give this to you."
Because
Okay.
you're not a citizen
Of Alabama. I
of
am a citizen.
Alabama.
But I
How
mean,
about
why
the
is
country?
citizenship? Why is citizenship a criteria? I don't know. Anyway, I think it's very localized. I mean, there are communities in California that are okay. There are some communities in Oregon that are okay.
Mhm.
A lot of it, I think, depends on sort of what is the local ethos. And so Alabama, fraught with all kinds of, racial issues, other economic issues,
Right.
whatever, that they, I mean, I think the thinking, the way it was expressed to the people in Uniontown was, it was condescending. I mean, you don't need this information. You don't need it. We know what we're doing. We're going to fix it. And don't challenge us. But, can I pull out one community that I think is great at
Yeah.
this? Not really.
Yeah. Is there one?
I'm sure there is. I'm sure. I hope after this podcast, somebody will come forward and say, "Hey, our little town of 500 people, we're great on public."
We're great and transparent. So I guess sort of wrapping it up this way, it because this is fascinating. Someone who um, worked in state government and really identify a lot with what you describe, and my own frustrations sometimes in dealing with uh, trying to. It wasn't even so much, and that's an important part, being transparent to the public, but even being transparent within the government,
Right. Oh,
right, so
yeah,
that Department A and Department B actually know what they're doing. It goes to
yeah,
what you were just saying about EPA and Department of Agriculture, and everybody's kind of got their little silos, but because there happens to be this sort of level of overlap, we're gonna, we'll treat that a certain way, but you don't get much more information than that. So,
yeah.
what does that fight for transparency teach you, or the lesson you level up in the book? What does it say about the state of American democracy, and has your view of citizenship as an instigator of transparency or defender of transparency, in reporting these stories changed at all?
Well, I think, first of all, the book shows, even though it's a struggle, you can make a difference on the local level. And some of these issues will ripple nationally. I mean, certainly firefighter protective gear, that has rippled nationally. There,
Hmm.
firefighters now and the union too, all over the country saying, we shouldn't be wearing this stuff for as long as we're wearing it. It's flaking off, it's embedding in our bodies, whatever. So I think I think working hard at the local level and trying to create a culture of openness in your community, first of all, is good for you and your community. But secondly, it is a methodology that can move up. And so if you want to affect what's going on in Washington and you're feeling helpless, see if you can peel off a piece of that problem that your state government is working on and try to push there. I will say that I think elected officials do pay attention to numbers. And so, you just coming forward and saying, I have this problem, blah, 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 not good enough. If it's 40 people in my community have this problem and we are concerned about it, and here's what we think might be the fix, they'll pay attention. Also, just going back to what you said about government not talking to each other, I know elected officials who have said to me that they can't get information from
Right.
It's like, really? Are you kidding? So, and I will also say there's a toolkit or a sort of a how-to chapter at the end of the book, which gives a lot of very practical advice about ways you can push on government to get more information and to have them be more open. And I think that can be useful at any level of government. And also I think that it just, you have to really believe your issue and yourself,
Right.
and get allies. I mean, it's
Right.
not good to do all this by yourself, and you won't get as much attention if you're one person as you will if you're a big network. So
there it is. I love it.
I think there are answers out there, but it's not easy. But now's the time, it seems to me.
Well, I think that's a very important point. Now is the time, because we do see so much disruption in our governmental processes that, as I keep saying to folks, a lot of what you see happening at the federal level, and this is before we even get into what Miranda points out in her book, with state and local issues that need to be addressed. Any federal response that was there before, a part of it, any federal dollars, all of that part of the is now part of the disruption that's going to flow into. So if it was harder before, it's going to be even harder now. So finding allies, taking advantage of resources like legal aid societies that are actually doing real pro bono work, not Donald Trump pro bono work. That is, along with other tools are available to you. Backroom Deals, In Our Backyards, How Government Secrecy Harms Our Communities and the Local Heroes Fighting Back. Miranda Spivack, thank you so much for taking some time to bring this to us. The book is out now, folks. Grab a copy of it. And particularly if you have issues in your community that you've been trying to figure out a way around, as Miranda noted, she's put some resource guides in there for you, some ideas. There are examples, obviously, of citizens that are doing this kind of engagement that you can learn from. For the local activists, community activists, trying to deal with real issues that impact your community, it's a good resource, a good guidebook for you as well. So, Miranda, thank you so much. Really
thank you very much. It's great being here.
It's good to see you again after all those years. So, she used to come after me pretty hard when I was in. So, so she's
You
a
were responsive, which a lot of people are not.
I was responsive, but she was a tenacious reporter then, and this is a good example of that tenacity in sort of peeling back the curtain and exposing lack of transparency where there should be more. Thank you again, Miranda, for your work. Folks, that does it for this time together. As you know, I always love it when we do that voodoo together. Thank you for joining us, being a part of the Bulwark platform. Please do the download thing and the like thing. We love it when you do. And please pick up a copy of Backroom Deals in Our Backyards by Miranda Spivack. It'll be a great read for you. Until next time, remember what I told you. Stop playing with stupid, okay? Just leave them alone. Don't play with them. It's not good. It's not healthy. See ya.